Hello, how are you? Welcome to Trapping the Time. My name is Pablo, and today I'm going to talk to you about a piece of great significance to this channel. The Orient Future Retro Camera, a watch tribute to photographic cameras and mechanics prior to the digital age, also taking advantage of the flame that this clock has lit in the second part of the video. So if you want, join us and I'll tell you how this channel was born and a few more things. At the beginning of the 70s, the interruption of Japanese technology in the watchmaking world almost ended the dominant European industry. If they irredeemably disrupted watchmaking, what they did with the photography sector was even more savage. They literally wiped out the entire bulk of world production. It can be said that Japanese brands like Canon, Nikon, Fuji, Mintola, Pentax pretty much monopolized the market. The truth is that no one could compete with its quality and its prices. All this I'm saying is very relevant to the piece I want to present to you today. This Orient Future Retro Camera, one of my greatest hobbies, has always been photography. I bought my first SLR in 1986, and since then I've always had cameras, first mechanical and then digital, always Nikon, and they never stopped accompanying me and nurturing my passion for photography, a passion that I now share many years later with my watches. Perhaps that's why you can understand my affection for this piece. That might definitely seem unattractive to many, but that I love because it's a tribute full of good work and lots of nods to those mechanical cameras that we love so much. The first thing that will capture the attention of any photographic enthusiast is the bezel, with these marks that are so characteristic of the diaphragm ring of an SLR. Then you'll see the dial with that design that imitates the plates that regulate the opening inside the lens. And later you'll notice that circular skeleton that runs through the entire sphere and reminds you so much of the clamping mechanisms between the lens and the camera. Whereas at that second-hand dial with so many metal markers imitating the timer that those cameras had for a self-timer. And of course, many other small details that make up a constant well-achieved tribute, like those two small polished rounded screws. They have no apparent sense on the face of a watch, but they are so reminiscent of those old cameras, or the diamond pattern on the crown, or the side of the bezel, just like the one they had for the optics, facilitating the grip and the turn of the focus aperture rings. Also, that protection of the crown that I didn't know what part of a camera it reminds me of, because it's that aesthetic, it's high-level mechanization that was everywhere on these devices. If you turn the clock around, the tribute continues. A screwed cover reveals that small window at its heart. And also remember how the light passes through the lens to the negative, just as it passes through this watch, because as we saw, it exposes the movement on the dial. No matter where you look at it, it reminds you of the world of photography and those endearing cameras. But beyond the tribute, it represents with this watch, it happens with all Orients. You can't believe the quality they offer you for the price. Let's say it's not a luxury watch, nor does it pretend to be. On the contrary, its appearance is undistinguishably industrial, with a design to match those SLR cameras that had great engineering behind them, but essentially they were high-precision mechanical devices, and those who designed this extraordinary watch knew that perfectly well. The first model of this Orient saw light of day in 2005. That's when this watch was launched, but in its high range called Orient Star. The first had, among other differences, a power reserve indicator, which did not allow the dial to be appreciated as much as now. In addition, those holes in the dial that had at 3 and 11 o'clock have disappeared, and instead they've widened the slit that runs concentrically through the centre. The hands are still pencil thin, but now they have sharper ends and also are moved closer to the dial. Before, especially the minute hand, because it was too far apart, They've also eliminated the glass that obscured the hole through which we can see the movement, and the subdial of the second hand has been modified to better integrate it. Another noticeable change is the material of the case, which was previously titanium. Now it's made of steel, covered with PVD of a colour that I can't quite define because it's very, very dark, almost black, but it has some reflections with a metallic tone like brass. And now the strap, also made of black leather. It's more than possible that these changes have managed to reduce costs, but for my taste, the watch seen from the front has won in presence and effort to pay tribute to the SLR cameras, even more so. Where there is no doubt that the drop-in level of this retro camera is on the back cover. It's now circular with a vast redial brushing, and the opening through which we see the caliber has been significantly reduced in size, especially when compared to the first one, which had that fine satin polish, that cushion shape, and a very large window exposing movement. In any case, I think the designer has studied this very well, and knowing that it is a piece that's probably going to be liked by photography enthusiasts, if you position them by putting a high price on it, you're left with one very, very, very small niche market. That must have been why they launched this watch in the cheaper Orient range, albeit as one of the pieces they chose to commemorate their 70th anniversary, which was in the middle of last year. Even lowering the level, they've taken great care in the design of this watch. I understand perfectly that those who were not fond of this world of mechanical SLR cameras, this may appear ugly, or what I know at least strange, but I think that if you look at it well, you will appreciate its enormous personality. It's got an elegance beyond the tribute it represents. The dial in that elegant green colour contrasts nicely with the parts. There are many metal parts of the dial, the skeleton that runs through it, the second subdial, some parts of the exposed caliber or the metal ring that frames all of it, contrasting with the black of the bezel. And to add a touch of colour, the markers applied every hour on the outermost part of the dial, which are really small indexes that are there to remind you that this is a watch, but that totally give prominence to the other parts of the dial, that show great admiration and respect for those devices that they evoke. These indices are covered in a pale yellow luminous paste, just like the hands. For my taste, what offers the most sense of quality when you look closely at it is that three-dimensional aspect that they achieve with the cuts in the dial and the different heights of the subdials. They're all metallic, which contributes to that sensation of volume or three-dimensionality, which is also helped by the lack of a ring connecting the dial with the bezel. It's completely vertical and undecorated, in the same colour as the case. Overall, it seems to me a watch in which the design team has pampered all the details. It's very clear that they love those cameras as much as the watches they design, because only with that affection that unites you with those objects can you love the image and this magnificent piece. For me, it's a small work of art. It masterfully brings together two worlds that I'm very passionate about, watches and photography. But beyond that, it's a watch with an impressive design, much more alive in the photos, since it appreciates the characteristics that define it much better. Seen from the side, it seems too tall. In fact, it's 13.7mm. But I think this is something the designers wanted to give it that industrial look of the last century, putting the pins at the height of the lid and everything, the watch over the strap, and using that sort of NATO type. It's also usual to hide the side of the lower cover of the watch, narrowing it below so that it's a little bit out of sight. All this to make the watch look slimmer and also to make it easier to hide under a buttoned shirt cuff. In the Orient camera, there's none of that. Here is the entire watch. It sits above the strap, very vertical in view, showing off its unusual appearance. The NATO-type leather strap is not a coincidence, but something very well thought out. In fact, I will say it before I had to put my hand on the idea of changing it. but it immediately disappeared as soon as I understood better what its designers were looking for, and above all appreciating its eccentric beauty up close. Whichever way you look at it, it reminds you of the cameras, and it pays homage, and it does it really, really well. I think we just need to talk about the data and specifications for this Orient Retro Future camera that mounts a caliber of 6 seconds, 22 with 24 joules that beats at 3 Hz. That's 21,600 alterations per hour. It has a power reserve of about 40 hours with stop seconds and manual winding. Its measurements are 40.8mm in diameter, 13.7 high and 46 lug to lug, and 20mm strap width. Its water resistance bar is 5 bars. I mean, it's better not to get it wet, put it that way. And that's the end of the review for this piece for now. But as I said in the presentation, I wanted to take the opportunity to explain how this channel was born and a few other things. Cameras and watches look a lot alike. This statement might seem like nonsense, but for those who are fond of both worlds, I'm sure they'll understand me. With both, it establishes a link, a relationship that goes beyond the functionality of the device. It becomes something much more personal, trapping time, just like this watch that we've reviewed. The Orient concentrates the same passion for those two worlds, a passion that I also share with my children, who are very important and essential parts of trapping the time. They are Alex and Andre, and it can be said that they ended up turning their vocation, which is photography, video and computers, into what is now their profession. They were the ones who encouraged me to create this channel and thus be able to unite my great love for watches and theirs for images and digital creation. And I'm not going to lie to you, they didn't have to insist too hard. The possibility of sharing my collection and my passion for watches with people from all over the world was very attractive to me from the first moment. As you can see, the result is very satisfactory, since their work exceeds my expectations by far. What I don't know if they calculated correctly was that they were getting what they were getting into, and I don't think they did. They've made videos outside of working hours, stealing lots of leisure time, and I know they really like making them, but even so, sometimes it's a bit too much. To give you an idea, on the first video we worked for more than 6 weeks from when we started the project until the video was uploaded onto YouTube. It's also true that everything had to be done new. The cover for the videos, the channel logo, the music. For the following, will take 3 weeks. For the Citizen and the TISO, we've already released them in 2 weeks, and we're improving, being more effective thanks to the experience. And the truth is that we would like to be more productive and to be able to release a video every week. That would be the goal, but the problem is time and the number of clocks that are needed. But I must say that this has happened several years ago with the photography and the videos. The boys are now also fond of watches. Alex is still faithful to his precious Seiko Neosport. Well, he was faithful. Since he's seen my TISO, he has appropriated it. And the truth is, I'm delighted that they like my watches and that they want to use them. In the end, one day they will all be theirs because I don't intend to sell any of them. I think that my watches will connect me with them when I'm not here, and as it's happened to me with my grandfather, and that makes my hobby even more enjoyable. Andre is a little the opposite of Alex because he changes his watches as much as he changes his shirts, and in less than a year he's already made 6 or 7 pieces between purchases and gifts. His collection is more based on aesthetics and practicality. He doesn't care if they're quartz, solar, or mechanical. It's another way of looking at the clocks that I'm encouraging them to share on the channel, that their work is not limited to just being behind the cameras, and they're from another generation. They have their own opinions, they have other priorities, other tastes, and therefore other watches. And I think their contribution will make the channel grow. Also, counting now on everyone's pieces, we could get closer to that dream of a weekly video, or at least 3 a month or so, 1 every 10 days. But we've maintained our enthusiasm and desire since we've started, and now that there are even more friends or parts from around the world following the channel, it's fed our enthusiasm even more. Now we're full of ideas and dreams, although somewhat lacking in time and resources. It's also true that wanting is power, and what a certain amount of time, more or less, is the effort that's needed. A video a month or a week here is what we'll strive for, and we want to continue as long as we can with trapping the time. Needless to say, for the continuation of this dream, the most important thing is your support. So thank you very much for watching us, for subscribing to the channel, for giving it a like, for participating in the comments, and of course sharing. And that's it for today. Thank you very much for being here, and if you want to see the next video, stay tuned.